So this is our second panel about data and analytics. I think it's one of the most important things plaguing the music industry, and it's very important to understand. So the question is, what is new analytics? And for the topic, we have our amazing panelist, Tevaar Smith. He's the director of artist relationships and partnerships, as well as the co-founder at 195 Oak. We have Alex Holder. She is the VP of Digital Marketing at Concord. And we have Tony Tuesday, that is our A&R from OneRPM. So given the question about new data and analytics, based off of what used to be the central focus of numbers when it came to a lot of the things that made the decisions or helped people make the decisions, how do you guys feel that has changed over time and define new data and analytics today?
Hey everybody. So on my side, on the A&R side, it has changed a lot. So a couple years ago, data became a thing where all you had to do is have, some numbers, and right away you were being signed because of the data. At a distribution company, I work at OneRPM, is a little bit different because data can be misleading. So on our side, we do catalog deals. Everything's based on catalog. So, data goes up and down. One of the things that we pay attention to is just the relationship of how that data translate over a period of time. So on our side, is not looking as much as something that's spiking, is just something that's just has some trends or something that's moving, specifically for me.
Yeah, I think similar to the kind of trends versus spikes point that you just made on the marketing side, it has changed quite a bit, with how important social media has become, and especially the rise of TikTok. In the past, we would obviously look at streaming consumption, physical sales, et cetera. Now we're looking at your followers on Instagram, we're looking at your engagement on Instagram, we're looking at your views on TikTok. But even that, virality is not the key. I think for a minute, labels were signing based on, kind of flash in the pan moments on TikTok especially, and we're starting to see a lot of deals move away from that. We're really looking for artists who are able to build a fan base, engage that fan base, and sustain that fan base. So virality is great, but I would look at it more as a catalyst for, career longevity versus something that kind of comes and goes, because you can fade back into the background just as quickly as you rose to the top.
Yep.
So we're really looking at, we want to try to look at the picture really holistically in terms of not just how many views did your video get, but how many of those people who viewed your video actually became a fan? How many of those people converted to streaming? How many joined your email list? How many followed you on socials? So really trying to kind of paint a fuller picture of, who your fan base is.
I think to both of their points, at this point, I just think data just became really granular. Like, you can really distill down to like something so basic about a person, where they live, who they are, their age, and all that kind of stuff, where maybe 20 years ago that wasn't necessarily the case. But I feel like data's always existed, right? There's Nielsen's been around for years. Used to be able to call into the radio. They track those numbers. So this isn't like a new thing. It's just, I think it's just way more granular now.
Absolutely. So with that, having that definition of the new data and analytics, a lot of artists, managers, artist team, they see data more as a barrier or even just a direct critique of their art. How could they reframe it and see it as the tool it is?
I think using it as a learning experience, like that's what I would always encourage you to do. And we even do it on the label side. Like when we run a campaign and we look at the data from that campaign and we decide that we didn't meet the goal and the KPIs weren't there, that doesn't mean that we failed per se. It's more like, what does this tell us about how we need to redirect our efforts, redirect our spend? So there's always a story in your data. If you've set KPIs for yourself, if you have a goal of, 100K views on TikTok and you're hammering away and you're just not hitting that goal, maybe you need a different goal. So I think not looking at it as a metric of like success versus failure, and instead looking at it as sort of a dot, like it's a dot that you need to connect, right? So looking at your data as a full story and something that can redirect you and inform your campaigns, your budget, et cetera, so that you could be smart and not just be blindly, going toward one goal all the time.
I mean, data is just information, right?
I was
So
just about to say that.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if you touch the stove and you burn yourself, then you touch the stove
That's
again,
data.
you burn yourself. You touch the stove again and you burn yourself. By the fourth time, you can be like, hey, if I touch that stove, maybe I'm gonna burn myself. And maybe if somebody else attempts to touch the stove, you'll be like, hey, you're gonna burn yourself. And so it's just information that you can use to inform a decision. I feel like we turned it into like this almost ultimate boss.
The boogeyman.
Boogeyman type character, when it's like it's information that you can use to move with, navigate, whatever it is that you're trying to do.
So I'll give you an example. One of my biggest artists, his name is Cochise. What he does on TikTok, so before we put a song out, every single time we put a song out, he doesn't make full songs. He makes snippets of songs, and he makes courses, and he teases it on TikTok. If the data, meaning likes, views, comments, engagement, he sees he likes it, then he goes, he finishes the song, we put the song out. If he sees he doesn't get that much good data back, then he doesn't finish the song. We move on to the next one. Very easy.
So, I mean, even leading with that, I think that pushes us to the point where social media numbers become such one of those loud metrics for a lot of artists. So how do you decide when it's like actual valuable information or just noise?
I mean, every artist and every audience is going to be different. So I think that's the thing, is I think a lot of people kind of use like blanket benchmarks, when in reality, like every audience behaves differently. This thing that might work for this artist might not work at all for this other artist, even if they're super similar and there's overlap in their audiences, because everybody behaves differently. So for me, for social media, like take it all with a grain of salt and try not to get distracted by what others are doing. I think it's really good to watch your peers and the people that you admire and want to be compared to, just to get ideas and like keep things fresh, because we all know that it's like exhausting to keep coming up with social ideas over and over, but you need to pay attention to what your audience is telling you. So that's going to be the biggest learning point versus like, oh, this person went viral because they did this. No, you need to look at how people are responding to what you do and use that to inform what you do next. Similar to what you were saying about your artist, we work with Tommy Richmond, who had $1 Million Baby obviously go crazy viral on TikTok last year. That song was not even on our release calendar. That song was not scheduled. We had a different single scheduled. We had just started working with Tommy. Different single on the schedule that we were getting ready to work up to. He dropped a little teaser of $1 Million Baby in the studio, and the clip went insane on TikTok. That was not like a marketing campaign. Like nobody planned that. That was completely out of nowhere. The artist was just like, I want to see what happens. Drops that clip, it goes insane. We had to immediately turn around and get that thing out and cancel the other release, because it was like, holy shit, like we can't ignore the appetite here. We can't miss the moment, because we need to listen to what his audience is saying, not our meticulously planned marketing rollout and all that stuff is great, but the data that's like the reaction that's happening in real time, like that's the most important data, and you need to always listen to that, trust your gut.
I'll say for me, specifically on my side or our side, numbers, those social media numbers don't matter as much, because I have clients. I have one of my R&B singers. He has 13,000 followers on Instagram. Monthly listeners on Spotify, he has 500,000. And I have examples vice versa, where I have an artist who would have 1 million followers on Instagram and less than 100,000 monthly listeners. So social media doesn't always correlate to streaming, and vice versa. Streaming doesn't always correlate to social media, because I can like you for social media for a completely different thing. Maybe you post funny pictures. Maybe you have good content. Maybe you like food like I like food. But music could be something completely different, so it's not always going to resonate. When I would look more, and like, this is a little controversial when I say this, I look more for, when I look at their social media, like, are they good at making content? Are they good at promoting their own music? Like, are they good at being self-starters? Because as an A&R, my job at a distribution company, I'm here to help you help yourself. So I have to see that you know how to help yourself before I can help you.
I would just say there's probably something meaningful between the likes, comments, you know, et cetera, especially in the comments, right? Like if somebody's saying,
Engagement.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, are you in there talking to people? Like there's a stage where an artist can still like respond to everything that they're being sent. And so like, if somebody is under a post being like, hey, I love this song, maybe you respond to that. If there are a bunch of people from Atlanta all saying they love this song, maybe you look into that a little bit more.
Also, like, don't forget qualitative data to that point, because like number of comments is one thing, but what are they actually saying? Like, yes, it takes a little bit more manual work to deduce that, but like we have an artist teasing a song right now, and we were trying to figure out like kind of what, you know, she's got a lot of genre overlap. We could market her as Americana, we could market her as country, we could market her as folk. And, you know, she's teasing this track on TikTok right now, and we noticed that people in the comments were talking about book talk and like romantic fantasy fiction, kind of like younger women who read fantasy books. And so we've started hammering that sort of like book talk community on TikTok, and that is what is growing that track. So really looking at like what people are saying. If somebody comments on your YouTube video and says, I saw this on TikTok, okay, like what TikTok sent them there? Like you better go find that. You know, that could be UGC. It might not have even been your post.
1,000%.
Yeah, so like the sentiment of those comments is also really important.
Absolutely. So that brings me to the numbers themselves. And I know we've had conversations about it, but when it comes to, I don't want to, I guess a specific stat that misleads artists or tool that misleads artists, you know, what would you say kind of throws them off when they're trying to pitch themselves to, you know, or let me say strategize, or like just kind of get their plans, marketing plans together, and then try to get in front of a label or distribution company?
Can I say? Spotify monthly listeners.
I was going to say, do you want to say it in unison?
I always say Spotify monthly listeners. Spotify monthly listeners, and specifically, so I work in the urban department. I mostly deal with a lot of hip-hop, R&B, Southern soul music. Spotify numbers don't mean anything to me. Like most of my artists are Apple streaming artists, or YouTube streaming artists, or Pandora streaming artists. So one of my biggest streaming artists, so my artists, they're independent, means they make music, they make money every single month from the revenue. One of my artists, he makes $40,000 a month. So he streams very well. He does 4 million streams a month. Of those 4 million streams a month, only 35,000 are on Spotify. So if you look him up on Spotify right now, he has 35 monthly listeners on Spotify. That doesn't even show you the amount of revenue and the amount of fan base that he has. So on my side, for me, like everybody gets caught up on those Spotify monthly listeners. I know they don't mean anything because that's not your fan base. Like your fan base may be on AudioMac. Your fan base may be on TikTok. Your fan base may be on Instagram. Your fan base may be on whatever the platform may be. So, and I'm like everybody knows when we had the conversation, I like screamed, Spotify monthly listeners right away, because I'm anal about that.
Yeah, I can't agree with that anymore, because the number can be juiced in so many different ways. Like if you had one track go crazy, or if you're featured on a track that went crazy, the number may be high, but then if we look at your Spotify follower number, it may be a fraction of what that monthly listener number is. And so as somebody who also looks to sign artists and talent, I look at the percentage, right? Like if you have 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify and only like 50,000 followers, I know that there's a disconnect somewhere. And so, yeah, the Spotify monthly listener number is one that I can't agree anymore than that.
I'm going to kind of like invert the question, because I want to talk about a data point that I think is the most important, or I guess a group. Is that allowed, Brandon?
Yeah, and I'll say do that, but I kind of filter it back to Tony after, because that was my next question.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. But I think because everything we've been saying on this panel so far is like how every artist is different, and you might see high Spotify monthlies and high social, or vice versa, or high and low and vice versa. So there's a lot of noise out there with like public facing numbers, and it's easy to get distracted. What I look at is the high value actions. So if you look at a Spotify follow, it's really easy to follow somebody on Spotify. It's really easy to follow somebody on Instagram. But what about like joining an Instagram broadcast channel, maybe, where this artist is now in your DMs all the time, and you have to not get annoyed by that. Like you have to be a big enough fan to not get annoyed by that, right? Like that's a higher value action. Or joining a Discord channel where like you're active in a community that is based around that artist and that artist's music. That's a higher value action. Highest value action, giving away their first party data to you. So having their email, having their phone number, those are the people who are letting you contact them directly like that. Those are your core fans. And I think that that number is incredibly important because that's data that you own and that you take with you, and that Meta and TikTok and Google, YouTube can't take away your access. When we run advertising, like, Meta's allowing us to target those groups of people. And actually, if you're involved in advertising at all, you know that Meta just recently changed their interest targeting. So now, instead of targeting AC/DC fans, you can only target rock. And, you know, so they're making it harder for you to get specific with your targeting because you don't own that data. Even the people who follow you on Instagram, like, you don't own them. Meta could take that away from you at any time. So own your fan data. Like, no matter how small of an artist you are or how small of an artist you're working with, start building that email list. Like, have a sign-up sheet at your shows. You know, build that phone number list because that is going to be your most high-value audience. That's the end of my rant.
So just to rephrase or state the question again, is we've gotten the metrics that you think, you know, mislead artists. So now it's what metric do you pay attention to when it comes to your decision making, and, you know, I guess the why that is.
So one of the things I look at, specific, again, every A&R is different. He could tell you, everybody, where I work at, the A&Rs, we get to sign the artists that we want to sign. So it's based on the metrics that every individual A&R has their own metrics outside of what the company looks for. What I look for, I think, which a lot of people don't mention, Shazams. I look at Shazams. Shazams is a discovery tool. So if I go look at an artist and I see that people are Shazamming their music, that means that people are hearing their music somewhere and they're actively trying to find out whose song this is. So to me, that's important because that means that, one, your song is out there, but two, people are hearing it and they're liking it and they want to know who this is. Now, that doesn't mean that the song has to have 10 million Shazams or 1,000 Shazams, but let's say compared to, let's say you have 1,000 monthly listeners and you just put out a song and that song has 300 Shazams, dude, that lets me know that, hey, people are listening to your song and they like it and they want to know who you are. So that is, to me, one of the metrics that I, outside of, you know, streaming numbers or YouTube subscribers, I look at YouTube subscribers, but Shazam is one of the ones that I key on for sure.
I would say a consistency amongst tracks on an album, right? So, like, obviously the singles are gonna have more streams than the rest of the tracks, but, like, if you go to an album from an artist and the first 2 tracks have 100,000 streams, and the other, like, 8 have, like, 5,000 streams, there's a disconnect to me somewhere. You go to somebody like Benny the Butcher, for instance, like, you go to Benny the Butcher's albums, outside of the singles, all the rest of the tracks are probably within, like,
Have
a few
the same
percentage
streams.
points.
Yep.
That just means that, like, the fans that listen to him, they really like the music, right? They listen to the entire project, and so that's something that I really pay attention to.
Got it. So this question, I want to, you know, word it correctly. So what is the difference between social engagement and streaming traction, and how do you know if the viral attention will actually convert into lasting fans?
Man, it's different every time. So I think, speaking of vanity metrics, or metrics that don't matter, view counts can be totally inflated by boosting.
For sure.
So the engagement, like, is really what we should be looking at, right? And that's a huge indicator usually of if it's going to translate. However, if we're, you know, I'm talking about TikTok videos because that tends to be, TikTok of all the platforms tends to have the biggest impact on streaming from what we're seeing right now.
Sure.
I mean, YouTube, I hope, gets there with shorts because it's all on one platform,
But it's
but
literally
it's not
TikTok.
there right
No,
now.
it's TikTok.
But TikTok has the biggest impact on streaming. However, a video using your song could go viral, but if it's like a weird part of the song, maybe it's just an instrumental piece, or, you know, the video, the trend is very visual and the audio doesn't matter as much, we see less of an impact on streaming. Or if you notice that a video has a ton of views and not very many comments, not very many shares, etc., that's going to be that sort of artificially inflated video where the engagement isn't keeping up. So it is going to vary, but typically we'll see that impact on streaming when it is on TikTok and when the engagement is high and when a compelling part of the song is used. So they can be totally separate from each other, but I would say more often than not, they do correlate, that sort of virality and that streaming. But I also think, like, I know that it's not a sexy conversation, but like your optimization on streaming is super important. Like you have to keep your music discoverable, right? And like make sure if I see your video on TikTok and then I go to your YouTube and I can't find you don't have a video for that song, or it's not on your channel homepage, or I go to your Spotify, maybe it's not one of your top Spotify tracks, but you don't have like a playlist pinned. Like as soon as you have something taking off, getting any traction, on social, that needs to be front and center on all of your platforms, so that if I go look for you on YouTube, boom, it's right there. It's your welcome video. Like first thing I see on your channel, it auto plays. You have to make this easy for people, because people are lazy and they have very short attention spans. So it's like, oh, I like that song that I heard on TikTok, but I can't find it. Like I give up. So that's a really important thing to consider.
And I'll say specifically at OneRPM, we, on our dashboards, we're able to track the streams. So I can specifically tell you TikTok specifically translates to streaming more than anything else. I have an artist, his name is Johnny Damn D, he's from Texas. We put a song out last year in June. So one of the things I do when I sign an artist, in the process of us doing a deal, it takes about 2 to 3 months, they'll stop releasing music. So in order for them to not do that, I always have them do like a throwaway, if you want to call it that. Like, hey, let's just put something out to make sure that we're triggering the algorithm. This throwaway song that we threw out last year, 4 months ago, somebody did a dance to it on TikTok. And the song went from 3,000 streams a day, the song is now doing 50,000 streams a day. And the song, the dance has been used in the NFL. The NFL players, when they score a touchdown, they've used it. In college football, they used it. College Football 25, the video game, they use it in a commercial. And that all came from, now obviously, once that video took off and we saw it in the system, then we did other marketing things to keep pushing the song. But it literally came out of just somebody creating a video randomly for the song, and the song just blew up. And we just looked at the data, and the data show us to keep pushing a song. It's been huge, huge.
So I think that leads into like another great follow-up question. When you do see that success, or even when you're, like, I guess, pivoting in terms of like not seeing the analytics you want to see in your positions, and I do want to start with you, Alex. How do you navigate both the successful campaigns and when you want to double down on a song or a campaign or a release, versus when you don't see the numbers and need to pivot?
I think it's a really good question, because I think it's hard to contextualize, like, what does viral mean, right? Everybody throws around the word viral, but like, if you're used to getting 100 views on your TikTok and you suddenly get 5,000, that feels viral to you. But what is viral, like, I guess in TikTok's world, by the way, like talking to people at TikTok internally, they consider virality at least 1,000 creates a day. So 1,000 new videos a day using that sound for at least 7 days straight. So not just 1,000 videos in a day, 1,000 videos a day, but sustained, right? So when we talk about like sustaining that momentum, they're even using that benchmark internally. So that helps us, as a label group, figure out when we do want to double down on something, because once we hit that kind of threshold, we know, okay, this is big enough that like TikTok is going to pay attention to it, meaning that it matters in sort of the general ecosystem, right? Because there are plenty of sounds that go viral that aren't music either. So you're not just up against other artists, you're up against like, random sound effects and sound bites from movies and TV shows.
Whoop-de-doo.
Exactly. Thank you. We planned that. But yeah, it's a fine line, because you don't want to wait too long, but I think a lot of people make the mistake of spending money too early, jumping on something too early. They'll be like, oh my God, I got 100 creates in a day. Like, let's boost this. Let's put more money behind it. There have to be like green shoots of organic activity before you spend money, because that's the other thing. Plenty of people try to just dump money into a track and they're like, it'll go. If there's nothing happening organically, because I have labels come to me all the time, like within Concord, saying like, oh, we feel really good about this track, like let's run an influencer campaign. And I'm like, why would we run an influencer campaign if nothing's happening? Like you cannot manufacture virality. You just can't. And, you know, maybe if you're spending like 6 figures, I don't know, I don't work for a label like that, but like you really need people to organically latch on. So I would say have an idea of what your average is, what your kind of average benchmark is, and look for those big deltas and do all of the organic things, all those organic boxes that you can check. Do all of those things before you consider spending money, and if the needle is moved by the organic activity, that's when you should spend money. So you see that little jump, you do all your optimizations. Like I said, you pin that playlist, you move that video to your welcome video, you start replying to the comments, hammer that song on your own TikTok. That's the other thing, the artist has to lean in. That is usually the ticket to really connecting those dots for people and making sure that they understand, like, oh, this song is by Tommy Richmond. You know what I mean? Like, I know who that is now. And once you've done all of those things, if it is still moving, I would say if it's moving for like 5 to 7 days, like, get your budget, because that's when it's time to double down.
You need a reason to spend. Like, something needs to tell you, the reason can't be I feel. Like, I feel, that's one part of it. But like, what else besides I feel? Like, what else is telling you? Because, and again, and I work at a distribution company. I'm an A&R. My artists are independent. They own their music. So like, you as an artist, you're an independent business owner. So if you were any other business, how would you spend money? You would need a reason behind it. You're not just spending money to spend money. So my biggest thing to artists is that, is like, bro, treat it like if you were a pizzeria, if you were a supermarket. Like, what is telling you to spend money on that, and the money you're spending, what is the ROI on that? And I'll give you an example, right? So outside of streaming, we also do YouTube with our artists. So as part of their deals, I give artists video budgets. I can look up your YouTube revenue and see how much money your YouTube videos are making, just how you can see that. So if I see that your YouTube video is only making $1,000, why would you go shoot a $5,000 music video? That doesn't even make sense. No other business would do that but an artist. So one of the things that we teach is, hey, bro, let's look at that. Let's pay attention. Is something telling you to spend this money? And once you see something that tells you, then you have a reason to spend it, because it's just a waste. There is no ROI behind it.
I was just gonna say to Alex's point, looking for something to react to, right? Something reacts, and then you hope that the artist or somebody from their team leans in, right? Like organically posting about it, talking about it, if they have a press run or whatever the case may be, right? And then if that reacts, then you have something, you have information that lends you to spending more money.
Got you. So given the importance of each of your roles, especially like as key pillars in, you know, our artist journey when connecting or linking with a company distribution label, how does the cross-table conversations between marketing and A&R look today, especially with the flow of data being so involved in both in the decision making?
The flow, it's a collaborative effort. Again, specifically on my side, because my artists are independent and we both collectively look at their data. Marketing doesn't look at their data. So for instance, let's say I have an artist and he puts out an album tomorrow. Next week, I can look in our system and I can see which songs are streaming the most, which songs have the lowest skip rate. But outside of that, I can see which songs are being used on TikTok, how many times they're being used on TikTok, likes and favorites. So that's data that I can grab, because marketing may not know that. Marketing's not looking at that. I grab that data and I bring it to marketing. Hey guys, look, this song has 100,000 creates or whatever, 1 million creates or however many creates in the last few days. I think we're on to something. At that point, marketing takes the information that we give them from the data, and it's on their job to, you know, try to put this in front of more people's faces.
I would say similarly, I also work at a distributor, so we have a similar kind of setup to what they have. But back to the point we had about reactions and artists leaning in, right? Like if we're having a conversation about a rollout or whatever, the first thing I feel like a marketing team is gonna ask is, what is the artist and their team doing? And then from there, like if they're not doing anything, it's like, well, what can we do if they're not doing anything?
Oh, that's huge. That's huge.
So,
It's me, I'm the marketing team.
yeah.
But yeah, it's we are constantly asking that, and I think I think it factors into I don't know if it does for you guys, but for us, it can factor into signing decisions. If we have artists who don't have a footprint on social media and don't want to, like, you have to at least be open. You know, there are other strategies where it's like we could pay an agency to run a fan page, or you know, like we've got workarounds like that. But unfortunately, in 2025, like, you can't just be absent from social media. And the artists who are, they're very few and far between. It's an anomaly. It's not something to strive for because it is not normal or achievable for most artists. And also, plenty of those artists were successful prior to the rise of TikTok and Reels and all of this short form video. So even though social media can be like such a burden, and like I mentioned earlier, I know that lots of artists get burnt out and feel very overwhelmed by that workload, like, you have to be willing to at least put yourself out there a little bit and experiment and have a footprint, because again, that's how people discover. I mean, that's the main discovery vehicle. And if you think about it, like, this is the first time really that we've had a completely free platform. TikTok is completely free. And obviously, yes, I know there's other social media out there, but a completely free platform that impacts streaming so directly, like such a one-to-one correlation, and you do not need any money. So I know that it's a burden, but it's also kind of a gift that we have this platform at our disposal. And yeah, I just think, you know, when we get into signing conversations, liking the music is no longer enough. We have to know that that artist is willing to put in the work on socials. I'm not saying you have to post every day, but if it's someone who's super resistant, I think that it can deter us from doing the deal.
Because there's only so much we can do on our side if
Correct.
we're not doing on your side.
We can't, like I said earlier, like, you can't manufacture this stuff. Like, we can't go out there and be you. We can't just put a bunch of money behind your music and
Not anymore, yeah.
Otherwise, we would do it all the time. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, like, that'd be great, but that's not the game anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say to Alex's point, the artists that I've worked with that didn't do social media were like all legacy acts, like acts that had success early 2000s, 2010s, prior to any of this existing.
And to touch, I have one of my artists, he's from North Carolina. He lost his Instagram page 6 months ago. Our streams have dropped about 30%. And it has been a hassle to try to get this page back. And because that's how majority of his fans, knew about him and found out about his music was through Instagram. So, him losing his page, like, literally is hurting his career.
I think it can kind of be like out of sight, out of mind. I mean, because
Exactly.
if you think about like how saturated, these streaming services are, I mean, I can't remember the number of how many songs are uploaded a day to Spotify, but it's like insane.
50,000 a day.
There you go. And it, even for me, I have like some of my favorite artists releasing music and I won't see it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll be like 2 weeks later, I'm like, wait, what do you mean they put out a new song? And it's like, I'm even like actively listening and searching and browsing and all of these things, and like, I miss stuff. So I think, yeah, to your point, it's like you kind of need to be in people's faces, because they might miss you even if they're not trying to and don't want to.
So I have like a ton of more questions, but I know we're not going to be able to cover them. So I think we're going to throw it to the audience for y'all to ask any questions y'all have.
I got a real good question. How do you, Brandon, and Tony feel about the Yankees falling out of the playoffs? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You both, well, I know all of you talked a little bit about how TikTok is driving stream and consumption, but I'm curious, what are you actually measuring to know that it's coming from TikTok? Is it just, with advertising or with many things, there's not really a true attribution model in terms of saying, we know that this ad turned into this number of streams because the data gets lost? Are you looking at where your referral site traffic is coming from to a landing page, or are you just seeing because people are going directly from TikTok to Spotify? Because you can't really measure that directly, can you?
In the OneRPM distribution website, you can track the TikTok creations and likes and favorites for every single song that is released through our system. So we correlate the information for how many creates and when they're happening versus to how many streams are happening for the song during that day. So for instance, let's say the song is doing 5,000 streams a day, we start a TikTok campaign, or he does his new TikTok video and the video goes crazy. 3 days later, we see that now the song is doing 8,000 streams a day, 9,000 streams a day. But now we see that there's 200 creations or 300 creations on TikTok. So we're able to correlate the growth on the TikTok versus the growth on the streams on a daily, on OneRPM. I'm not sure how.
I was gonna say there's smart links that can track that, right? Like
Okay, yeah.
where it got clicked first, click-through rate, all that type of stuff. And so for sometimes it's as simple as that, right? Like somebody clicked the link here, went from their homepage on TikTok straight to Spotify and listened to the song.
Also, I think more than even deeper than just like streaming, we can look at like specific source of stream. So lean forward streams, like if we see not just a spike in streams, but a spike in streams driven by search on Spotify, that's like, okay, we know people are not just streaming more, but they're going to Spotify and they're searching, i.e. they heard of it somewhere else, right?
That's a good one.
So I think looking at like if you had an artist that was previously doing a lot of like lean back or passive streaming where it's like coming from, you know, algorithmic playlists or radio or what have you, and then it changes to a lot of like search-led and collection-led streaming, like their artist profile streaming, that's a good indicator. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, the YouTube comments. Like I can answer a lot of my questions with YouTube comments because people will be like, TikTok sent me here, or I'm here because of TikTok. And so sometimes when I think when you have like a super developing artist, it's easier to draw that kind of one-to-one correlation. But if you have an artist that like is maybe more established, they're touring, they're doing this, they're doing that, you kind of can't tell like what's driving what. A lot of times YouTube comments can solve your problems.
Okay. One thing that I did want to add to everything you all are saying, other than TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, looking at their data, what other softwares or platforms are y'all using? Because I heard you say you can look and see, okay, the Smart Link, it went from TikTok to Spotify. Like, what are these platforms that maybe independent labels can probably get into so we can see the same information you all are?
I mean, Spotify for artists is one, but there's like a for artists for almost every platform now. There's Spotify for artists, Apple for artists, Amazon.
There's TikTok for artists now.
Amazon has one. So there's all the same information that we're being
Chart
fed.
metrics is one.
Chart
metrics is one. There's a lot of different websites. Chartmetric is kind of like the standard one. It's kind of like the easiest one that everybody uses. You can get a label page, you can get an artist page. It's just a monthly subscription. But that one gathers most of all the information from everywhere else and compiles it into one place. You're not going to see streaming numbers, meaning you're not going to see how many streams you're doing on Apple or anything else, but it'll give you playlist, audience, demographic. It'll give you a whole bunch of other information.
There is also, like if you're talking about the smart linking platform where you can kind of track like where people are clicking from a landing page. There's Feature FM, Feature FM, Foundy, Linkfire. Those are, like all of those have a free tier where you can kind of build the landing page and then you run your ad and you send them to the landing page. You can see how many people clicked Spotify, Apple, etc. And so that is kind of helpful for like journey tracking. And then one other tool, I do not know if they have a free tier, so I'm sorry if they don't, but CoBrand is a phenomenal TikTok analytics tool. CoBrand. Yeah, if you have not heard of CoBrand, look them up. They're incredible, and they actually lay out kind of like what you were talking about with the OneRPM dashboard. They'll lay out Spotify streams on top of TikTok and Reels creations so you can see those trends just overlaid. And then they let you dive into like what hashtags your comment is or your content is appearing next to, and what are the top performing posts using your music so that you can like reach out to those creators, interact with those posts. So it's a really, really great tool.
Hi. Okay, help me formulate this question. It's a problem that I have in my head. I'll lay it out with an example. There's a lot of Reels, TikToks that I see, and I hear the same music, and it's kind of like a part of my brain now. Those songs, it's part of like my lived experience almost, but I don't know who did them. And I like them. I won't ever reuse them, but I know them by now, and I think the Ordinary song is one that comes to my mind because it's so ubiquitous, right? What are you actually talking about? Are you talking about the success of a song? Or are you talking about the amount of success a song is getting, or the amount of success or the growth of an artist? Because I'm also thinking about Benson Boone, for example. It's overwhelming the amount of times you've heard that song, and that song is tremendously, obviously, successful. But in a way, I do not feel like his success is equivalent to the success of that song. So are you all talking about using this to promote a song and get a number of streams and a lot of money off of a song? Or are you talking about growing an artist? It comes back to what you were saying, or one of you all were saying, like 2 songs. Yes,
It's
2 songs
exactly
have a
what Tevaar was
million
saying, yeah.
streams, but the rest of them only have like 3,000. So how can you use the data? You're talking about the creates of a song. Is that really, that seems to me more important to the label and getting a lot of streams than it is to the artist, because wouldn't it be more important to the artist to have their own content being consumed in high numbers as compared to being created?
It's a catalyst is the way that I would look at it, right? So like, that's not the end game. That is your catalyst for driving more holistic artist and career development. So that's kind of like how you first get everybody's attention, and then it's all about what you do with that attention after that. So like I said, if people are viewing, you know, your content, right? How do you now, or excuse me, your song and other people's content, how do you tie it back to you? You start hammering that song on TikTok. Now how do you get those people to be driven back to your catalog, or maybe the new track that you have coming out, right? Like, we want to actually pull those fans into our funnel. We don't want it to just be like surface level social media engagement. So maybe I would run an audio ad on Spotify where the audio bed is my viral song that fades into my new song. And I've got voiceover like, hey, like, so glad you loved my song on TikTok, like, listen to my new song here. Things like that kind of like help people associate, like, oh, the hook is the song that I know, but then I'm being driven into more music by this artist. We have an artist called Pierce the Veil that had a song from their album 2 years ago go viral on TikTok this year. And we made a complete collection playlist on Spotify where every other song was the viral song, but their whole catalog was spliced in between that. So people, because the whole trend with the song was that people were looping it in a lot of like long form content. So we kind of mimicked that in the playlist, but we put in all their other tracks kind of based on what we thought people would like, you know, what sounded most like that song. So it's, to answer your question, it's both, but like the buck doesn't stop with the one viral track. Like the whole point is to take that as an open door and like push people toward the rest of your content, get their email, get their phone number, like bring them into your core fan base.
I was gonna actually say, yeah, that's what you're just talking about is discovery, right? Like everybody discovered an artist somewhere, and then from that point, it's up to that artist, their team, to make you buy into their story. Because that's what we're really buying into with an artist is like how much you resonate with them, how much you connect with them, the story about them, but you discovered them from this one song. And from there, the hope is that, to Alex's point, you go down the funnel and you're like, man, I'm also from North Carolina. I also love the Tar Heels. I also love this thing. And now, you know what? Maybe I am a fan of this artist. But it starts with that one moment.
All right, panel, I think we've got time for one more lightning round question.
So I know you guys mentioned throughout the panel that there's a lot of disconnects from like social media to streaming and everything. So with that being said, what does it mean when the person has more streamings versus followers? And also when you do see that disconnect, does that incline you to help them, or do you like, what is your thought process when you see that disconnect?
Can I be honest? I mean, on my side, when I'm looking for artists to sign, when I see that disconnect, it's a red flag. Because, okay, let's say you have a big social media and you have low streaming numbers, then I've worked with a lot of artists like that. One, the expectation to an artist like that is completely delusional because he has 1 million followers on Instagram. So he thinks that he doesn't have to go through the steps like a regular independent artist has to go through. So the things like like she mentioned earlier, replying back to comments on your Instagram, like going through your request DMs and replying back, just like the little steps to gain fans. I know that somebody who has a big social media following is not going to do the small independent work that a small artist who doesn't have that following is going to do. I just know on my side it's just more difficult to work with somebody like that, not because I can't help them. I just know the trajectory is more difficult because, dude, I have 1 million followers, bro. Why am I not getting this many? Why am I not people listening to my music? It's just, it makes it weird where, and not weird, it just makes it more difficult how I can help you. That's just me.
Was your question if they have a strong streaming following and low numbers on Instagram? So I think it was the opposite. They have strong streaming numbers, but the numbers on socials are extra.
Oh, I love that. I'd rather that. The social, I could care less about your social media numbers because I'm in the streaming business. Like, so at a distribution company, we make money when you make money. So like how you make money is based on your streaming revenue. So like I want you to make as much streaming, I want you to make $1 million. Like there's no bigger champion to your success than me because we make money when you make money. So like I could care less about any social media numbers. I'd rather more care about how can I grow that streaming revenue. So if you're making $1,000 a month, how can I help you get to $5,000 a month? How can I help you get to $20,000 a month? How can I get you $100,000 a month? Because that's when we as a company, we really start making money.
I would say the few times I've seen what you're describing, where the artist does really well on streaming, but for whatever reason it hasn't turned over on socials, it's been like inconsistency. Like they don't post on Instagram or TikTok consistently, or they don't care for it, right? It's a grind to get them to post, but the music that they do put out, people really resonate with. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I think it comes down to some of the stuff we talked about earlier, finding ways to get them more engaged on whatever platform works the best for them, in my opinion.
Because I do think, yes, it's sort of, like you said, it's kind of a dream scenario because you're like, great, usually you need the social to move the streaming, and in this case I don't. However, it's a flag to me as a marketing person because the algorithm can change at the drop of a hat, and suddenly you're not successful on streaming. And it's hard to tell just from streams how much of that is like a real true core fan base versus just sort of you're being algorithmically favored, you've gotten some really key editorial placements, or maybe you've had like one track that really took off. Like it's hard to discern that from just streaming data. So I think if you don't have the social audience and that fan engagement to back it up, you risk sort of falling victim to the way that these DSPs tend to sort of just change things up without warning. So it's really good, even though it seems like a dream scenario, like you always want to make sure that you have both pieces in place so that when the tides do change, because the same thing happens on socials, right? Algo changes, mess with your analytics and your performance all the time. So if you've got both pieces there, you're going to be set up for success.
Actually, just one point that she made earlier too, having a strong email list and text list is probably stronger than both of those. So if you have that, right, like you can connect with these people directly. Because to her point, Instagram changes the algorithm, TikTok changes the algorithm, but if you have people's emails, you can always contact them.
I'm literally begging everyone in this room to start collecting emails and phone numbers. It can like change everything for you. Those are the highest converting fans. Those are your people. Do it.
And I mean, that pretty much concludes the panel, but there's one thing that I did want to say, and it comes back to our planning meeting where you spoke about setting benchmarks. And I do want you to just kind of mention that because I think that's super important for artists when navigating the space of analytics.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but like really think it's important to set goals for yourself, be honest with yourself along the way to those goals, and change the goals if you feel like those are no longer the right goals for you. Even for us, like on the label side, like we are, every single rollout that we have goals that we are trying to meet. And if we don't meet those goals, it's a learning experience. Or maybe we had the wrong goal and that is a learning experience in itself, right? But if we're not measuring our performance, like what is your North Star, right? Like, what are you working toward? And how do you celebrate those like little victories to avoid the burnout? Because I think we all fall victim to like that comparison, right? Where you're like, oh, like I'm still not like him, or I'm not like her, that artist that I'm really trying to emulate, right? But you have these little victories along the way. You meet these goals, you get to set a new goal. Like, that's growth, and that's exciting, and it's not easy. Like, it is a grind to hit every goal, no matter how small it is. So I think benchmarking helps all of us like keep ourselves honest in terms of what we're working toward, how much progress we have or haven't made, and what we need to do to get there. Because otherwise we're just sort of aimless, and we're like latching on to these trends and these moments that we think are going to be like a silver bullet, but you can't rely on those silver bullets, right? We want to be measured, and we want to be honest with ourselves and let the data do the talking.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your time, and that is it.
Let's give this amazing panel another round of applause, please. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. So that